On Columbus Day weekend 2017, Holliston hosted the National America in Bloom Symposium and Awards Celebration. The Holliston in Bloom Committee, led by Mark Aronian and Kathy Shore, brought people from 40 communities and 19 states to Holliston to hear stories from our history and learn about our current achievements that support our town and its future.
Thank you so much for coming. We're very proud to have you all here from around the country.
A highlight of the weekend was lunch and a walking tour of Holliston. It was a perfect fall day for our team of 16 tour guides dressed in period costumes to lead our 170 guests to 8 locations where they experienced the magic of Holliston's history and horticulture. The visitors were greeted by the high school marching band and led to a gala New England-style lunch under the big tent in Goodwill Park. Entertainment was provided by members of the 27th Lancers, who portrayed Paul Revere and William Dawes.
Good afternoon, judges of America in Bloom! What a glorious day to be in Holliston! We welcome you. You're probably all wondering, what are Paul Revere and William Dawes doing in Holliston today? Well, Paul Revere was actually a landowner in Holliston, and William Dawes has ancestors that live locally to this day.
Also, our high school chorus and the Mudville baseball team. Our visitors said it was the best reception they ever attended at a symposium.
156 that Mudville first came to be, from the sweat of Irish labor and carved from earth and sea.
Sweet Caroline, pop, 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 the times never seem so good. So good, so good, so good.
And I think that's about it. Are we ready?
We're ready, guys.
Are you guys ready? All right, let's go.
Let's begin at Pinecrest Golf Course, where Deborah Moore told her story about leading the effort to buy the land in 1986.
Welcome to Pinecrest Golf Course, everyone. Holliston's own golf course. I'm sure you've heard the story of how the town acquired the course, and now I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's been happening here since the town acquired it. When we first bought the course in 1986, it looked like this for the clubhouse. I don't need any pictures to show you what it looks like now, but this building here, the maintenance building was on the roof. The septic system bubbled up in the parking lot when it rained. It looked like it belonged to a third world country. But since then, we now have this wonderful clubhouse that seats about 108 inside. We have a tent area, and we have the deck that people love this time of year. We have events here, and it's just a fun place for everybody in town and other visitors from out of town. Some of the projects that we've worked on since then have been, first of all, the practice range across. If you turn around, you can see it. When you drove in, you could see it. It's the best practice range in the area. It's all sodded, and people come from all over to play at our practice range. Then at the top of the practice range, we have a well that was left over from the farm that was here originally. We refurbished the well. We put in a new irrigation system on the course. We ran the pipes from the well at the top of the practice range, across the street, into the pond. We had the pond dug out by Central Mass Mosquito Control at no cost to the town, saved us about $100,000, and one year in the month of June, they took the whole month, dug it down far enough, so now we irrigate from the pond the entire course, and there's a pump house over there, and it does a great job, and we have not had to go back on town water since we started that. The only thing that we have to remember is to stop pumping water from the well early in the season, not when you need it, so we always have a full pond there. And that has worked out great. A few years ago, we needed to put in an aerator because there was algae bloom in the pond. And as you can see, the fountain over there, it does its job helping to decrease the algae. And it's also a beautiful focal point. If you're dining on the deck, you can see the pond across the street with the aerator there. Another project that we have undertaken in the last couple of years is trying to rid the course of invasive species. And the company that now leases the course from us, they have bought a $40,000 mower, and they have been really aggressively mowing back some of the invasive species so that we don't lose trees and so forth. And it started right there behind you on that little hill, and that was once entirely invasive species. So that's been a good program, and working with the management company, they've done a great job trying to do that around the clubhouse and also out on the course. Over the years, we've done new cart paths, and this year we just put in over $30,000 of new cart paths. And with that goes drainage. It makes the course more playable. We can realize more revenue from it because you can have the carts out there earlier in the season when it's wet and so forth. Behind me, you'll notice this beautiful practice green. Well, when we were doing this project with the clubhouse, the maintenance building, the 2 parking lots, we ran out of a little bit of money. So we thought, how are we going to make this practice green happen? Well, what we did was we got together with some of the businesses in town. Outpost Farm was one of our neighbors next door, and AJ and Kevin Drake were the people that helped build that. Highland Farm, they also helped build it. The management company at the time donated all the materials for it. Kevin Drake, his dad, was the expertise in it. He built golf courses for a living, and he lived on Highland Street at the time. So he designed it and brought all his equipment here. And then a neighbor of mine up the street, Tim Smith from Moisture Tech, he put in the irrigation system at no cost for the town. So we probably saved a good $50,000 or more with 5 businesses in town actually coming together and making this happen for us. And it's a beautiful sight to see the high school teams here in the fall. And they were here this week. They were taking pictures, and it's just great to see them in their uniforms. And the high school team uses the golf course free of charge every season for their practice and their tournaments. So that's something that we're really proud of. We have a lot of kids programs here with Park and Rec, a lot of clinics introducing young kids to the game of golf. And also our senior citizens, there's senior leagues from the senior center, there's men's leagues, there's women's leagues. We have tournaments here, so we have a lot of activity. Another thing that we have done, my husband and I never knew it was going to start like this, but this old clubhouse here, I used to hang a hanging basket and have a planter. And from that has grown this beautiful garden area. And out on the course, we have about 36 planters that my husband and I plant every year. A lot of the perennials here have come from our gardens at home. We have the window boxes. We also have a tree planting program. And as you can see here from this other poster, this tree spotters guide. This was something that the garden club did for us. They went around and named different trees on the course around the pond, the walkway, and told a little bit about the trees and what they were used for. And that's so the golfers or anybody out there walking in the off-season will know what types of trees they are. They actually won an award for this. And one more item I'd like to tell you about, there's a big rock pile out here, and if you look over there, you can see the rock pile. And it's always up for discussion what it really is. Indian burial ground, everybody has their own opinion. But our town historian has set us straight, and she told us that it was built with the work of Italian immigrants here when it was a farm. And they were the ones, when they were clearing the land, actually built that rock pile. So we don't have an exotic reason why it's there, but people like to speculate, but that's the real reason why it's there. And it's kind of a little picturesque place. People take pictures out there. We have weddings up here. They go out in the course and take pictures there and around the pond. And I have a little takeaway for you. We have golf balls here that say Holliston in Bloom, and on the back Pinecrest Golf Course, so you can remember our visit to us. And these are compliments of Johnson Management.
At the Town Hall and Central Burying Ground, we experienced a colonial muster by a group of musket reenactors led by resident Jeff Seymour. Blair Square is one of our outstanding revitalization projects and is the home base to our rail trail. Mary Greendale and town planner Karen Sherman described Holliston's open space preservation and farm policies and our local zoning laws.
Hi, I'm Mary Greendale. Welcome to our discussion of open space preservation. This is Karen Sherman, our town planner. Open space preservation became a real issue for Holliston starting somewhere in the early 60s. What happened was that in the Civil War our population was 3,500, and still in the 50s it was 3,500, until all of a sudden a lot of the farms were sold, a lot of the woodlands were sold, and we ended up with major developments like Queens and Brentwood and all of the development that's along Norfolk Street, all at one time, like whoosh bang. And as a result of that, the town put in some zoning in the early 60s. And then as time has gone on, we have found other tools, if you will, to manage to preserve some things. I think that the first one, we got, Camp Potomac was a sort of a donation for a fee, if you will, that we bought. You know, somebody was going to sell it. Do you want to buy it for its appraised value? The town says yes. So the town bought Camp Potomac. That was in the 60s or early 70s, somewhere in there. And then as we got into the 80s, I remember we acquired the golf course. That was under a 61A, right? And that is a tax benefit that people who run farms and earn some living off of the farm, they get a discount on their property taxes. The deal is that when they go to sell, or if they go to sell, they have to pay back the taxes. The town gets a right of first refusal. The farm, the other farm, the APR farm, Massachusetts has a law called the Agricultural Preservation Restriction Program. It's where the state will give a community, a farmer rather, in a community, funds for the, what they call the development rights. It's not literally, it's the difference between the appraised value for farming and the appraised value for development. That difference goes to the farmer. He gets to keep the farm. He gets to use that money for farming endeavors. When he sells, he can never sell it for higher than the appraised value. So that is how we have Highland Farm up on Highland Street.
Zoning is an exciting topic, and since we have a town meeting form of government, it's something that Holliston residents will roll their eyes at. Essentially, cluster zoning has been available in Holliston since 1975. We were one of the first communities around to have cluster zoning. The first bylaw was a modest bylaw with a 15% open space set aside, and that open space becomes permanently protected. That bylaw was put into several big subdivisions, so the developer was able to realize a savings by having less infrastructure, shorter roads, less drainage, less frontage for each individual lot, less lot area for each individual lot, in exchange for permanently protecting some open space. There's a really good example up against Lake Winthrop that has some really nice open space. The houses are clustered, set back from the lake. There's a nice open space buffer to the lake, and they use that as an access point to the lake and have both passive and active recreation there. In 2007, we amended our cluster bylaw to enact one of the state's first by right cluster provisions. So that means that we not only allow it, but recommend cluster subdivisions. So they're done by right. They're up to 50% protected open space now. Larger reductions in individual land area and frontage with a waiver of all the dimensional ticks of zoning. And every subdivision we've done since 2007 has been a cluster. And it's netted the town several hundred additional acres of protected open space.
And about 20% of our land is in protected open space. We also have the Community Preservation Act. We, by a local vote, agree to set aside 1.5% of our tax revenues to be used for affordable housing or open space or historic preservation. We also have an open space committee and an open space plan.
So the Open Space Committee is sort of a cross-sectional committee, and they have a program of targeting open spaces. We have an inventory within the plan, and those parcels are ranked according to things like whether they're adjacent to other open space, whether they protect, whether those have valuable resources. And they take that matrix and evaluate those properties and would bring them to town meeting or identify other funding sources for them. The plan is currently certified till 2020, and it mimics that plan from 1982 that says protect up to between 20 and 25% open space. So we are there in our goal. So now we're talking about selectively adding spaces to our inventory. It's quite an impressive inventory. The surrounding towns and the Regional Planning Commission use our open space programming as an example. We don't have a lot of state land in this town, and we're one of the only surrounding towns that doesn't have a big chunk of state land. Holliston has done it with the help of several nonprofits. We have some big properties owned by the Audubon Society and by the Harper Charles, thank you, Paul, Harper Charles Land Trust.
Wennekeating Woods.
Wennekeating Woods, exactly.
Yes, so.
If you can say that 3 times fast, that's fabulous.
Yeah, we'll be testing you.
Wennekeating Woods.
History was alive as our guests walked through Mudville to the Water Street Mills, where the Holliston Historical Society presented our industrial roots and immigrant heritage.
Welcome to the Holliston Historical Society display. Our display on the left exhibits some of the early industries for which our town was known: shoe manufacturing, straw hat and bonnet manufacturing, and cranberry growing. In 1793, the first shoemaker's workshop was established by Colonel Ariel Bragg in Holliston. Thus began a cottage industry of boot and shoe manufacturing in Holliston. With the addition of railroads in the mid-1800s, transportation of raw material, finished products, and people became easier and faster. Manufacturing grew also as factories were built to satisfy the increasing demand for finished goods. In 1891, the 4-storied building dubbed the Big Shop was erected here at 2628 Water Street. It housed the I.A. Beals Shoe Company from Brockton for a short period. Holliston was seen as too expensive to do business in, and the building remained vacant until 1906, when Arthur Ashley Williams Shoe Factory relocated to 2628 Water Street and became one of the largest economic forces in Holliston until the 1950s. The steel-toed safety shoe, its signature invention, drove the company's huge success. Workers in the straw hat and bonnet industry were employed both in the factory and doing piecework at home. This enabled women, especially widows, to have a source of income. At the height of the business, 50,000 hats and bonnets were produced annually, with up to 200 workers being employed. Our county, Middlesex County, was once the largest grower of cranberries in the United States. Now it's southeastern Massachusetts, including Cape Cod, Nantucket, and Martha's Vineyard, that grow most, as we no longer have active bogs here in town. The three types of Holliston berries grown here were the Holliston, the Centennial, and the Middlesex. The Holliston had long vines, so all picking of that variety had to be done by hand rather than with scoops or later with machines. We are also displaying the power of creative imagination in a small town. Drawings of some of over the 500 items that have been invented or improved here in Holliston, and which have been registered with the United States Patent Office in Washington, D.C., are on display here. This includes the wax paper cutter box, still used today, and a special soap dispenser used by surgeons in hospitals. Our display on the right features photographs and examples of the activities from the Society's yearly hands-on program for all Holliston third graders, 18th Century Days. 18th Century Days is one of the most successful programs put on by the Holliston Historical Society. A week in spring is devoted to bringing all the third grade classes to the Holliston Historical Society to experience life in the 18th century. Over a week in spring, 2 classes of third graders arrive every day. Each class is split into 2 smaller groups, and they each visit all the areas such as candle making, stenciling, and braiding. They go to school in our schoolhouse, write with ink and quill pens, and must obey the rules of early American classrooms. They cook over an open hearth stove and eat the products of the cooking. We have an herb garden at the Society, and they see what the herbs look like and learn their importance to colonial cooking. The children learn how to sew by making an embroidery design on a square of material. Clothing and what our ancestors wore is demonstrated. And of course, children have always played, so these children get to play with colonial toys such as hoops and various wooden toys. After a day of immersion in the 18th century, the children return to school. Our program is a joint project run by volunteers from the Historical Society and the School Parent Volunteer Organization. All presenters must be in costume to create the atmosphere of the 18th century. Our program has been going on long enough so that some of our parent volunteers remember when they were in the third grade and visited the 18th century at the Historical Society. It is gratifying to hear from some teachers that this is the favorite field trip of the third graders.
No trip to Holliston is complete without meeting Mayor Bobby Blair. At his house, we were treated to Irish coffee and scones. He regaled us with tales of Casey at the Bat and the Downtown Marigold Project, which started Holliston's beautification effort 13 years ago.
Welcome to Casey at the Bat. Thank you for coming from all across the country. As you can see behind me is the mighty Casey. And probably if you're over 45 or 50, you might have an inkling of who Casey at the Bat is. It's a famous poem about a mythical ball player named Casey. We here in Holliston, this part is known as Mudville, believe that Ernest Lawrence Thayer, who was born in Lawrence, Massachusetts in 1866, probably used the name Mudville, and he stole it here because his mother married a man by the name of Darling, and not far from here, only a half a mile or so, is the Darling woolen mill that Ernest Lawrence Thayer's mother owned. As you can see looking around, these are smaller houses. The Irish came here most likely due to the potato famine. They started arriving in the 1840s. Behind this house, to my right, your left, is the railroad bed, now a rail trail. And many of the workers that lived and settled right here in Mudville worked on the railroad. Farther up the railroad, probably a half a mile or so, is a tunnel. And two companies went out of business trying to cut through a hill and put this tunnel in. And at that time, the railroad was delayed. So many of those workers lived in houses, which you will walk over there shortly, under the arch bridge. And they stayed in there 20, 30, 40 men, and they would take shifts of sleeping. At that time, Holliston had no Catholic church. It had no cemetery. So the Catholics here in this portion, this neighborhood, would walk to church to St. Mary's in Milford on the railroad tracks. It's almost 6.5 miles. As people often ask me, because this is my home over here, I don't have very many closets. Well, if you think back then in the 1840s, you didn't need very many closets. You had your work clothes and your Sunday go-to-meeting clothes, and that was about it. You can also see over here, we call this the Great Wall of Mudville. That was built by an Irishman who came here in 1990. His name was Frank McCormick. The arches were a gift from Frank to me. I let him stay in my home. He had 4 children at the time. He was a sheep farmer. He was from Boston, Tubber, Ireland. And he came over and he did odd jobs so he could save his sheep farm. And in gratitude, I didn't charge him any. I just said, come on in. He sent the arches over. The wall itself was built by P.J. Kilkelly, who was my neighbor in Ireland. I had a holiday home in Ireland. P.J. was my neighbor. I brought him over here, and ironically, P.J. had worked for Frank McCormick. Frank was just here 4 weeks ago. In this last recession that we had, the Great Recession, it also hit Ireland. Frank, while he was here, worked for my uncle up on the main street up here. And he said, Jesus, no, he says, if your uncle can make money making headstones, he says, I'm going to go back and do that myself, which he did. He became a multi-millionaire. He had an office in Boston. And when this last Great Recession hit, he lost it all. But since then, like the ever-ready bunny, he's back up and running. He was here with business in Ohio, in New Hampshire, and down the Cape. So we invite you to come over here and have some scones, some Irish coffee. Easy on the Irish coffee now. You're going to be going up the embankment on the Arch Reef Bridge. So thank you for coming.
Here's Bob Shore in a Mudville baseball uniform, giving us some background on this interesting neighborhood.
All right, folks. Does everybody see the plaque on the rock over here? Well, what that's doing is that's signifying the first shoe factory that was built in Holliston back in 1879. John Clancy, and the Clancy name is synonymous with Holliston for many generations, built the shoe factory. And what you may not know is Holliston made more boots than any town in the country at one point. And in fact, we were the first town to build steel-toed boots. So that's a little interesting fact of how we were able to invigorate our commerce here. And you may also notice across from me here what looks to be a London phone booth. Well, this is a free library that people manage for the town. And there's about 6 of them across the town. And little interesting fact, there's about 50,000 of them across the country in more than 70 countries. So we have 6 of them here.
At the Central Fire Station, we saw a fine example of a renovation which honors historical preservation.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Cassidy. I am the chief of the Holliston Fire Department. I have worked for the town of Holliston for 25 years, the last 17 of which I have had the privilege of serving as chief of department. Here at the fire department, we have a different staffing model than many of the communities around us. Unlike many of the communities nearby that have full-time personnel that are at the station, upstairs watching TV, downstairs maintaining the apparatus, ready to go when someone calls 911, our fire personnel and our EMS personnel are embedded in the community. They are carpenters, electricians, plumbers, masons, mothers, fathers, and when there's an emergency, they stop what they're doing, they go to one of the 5 stations. This is our headquarters, but we have 4 substations in the community. They get in the apparatus, they take care of the emergency, they bring the apparatus back, and then they go back to coaching soccer or football or teaching CCD or going over their math homework with their child, doing whatever it is that they were doing. One of the things about our firefighters is they don't just volunteer their time when there's an emergency. Several years ago, when the station needed to be painted on the outside, they came down on a Saturday and they painted the exterior, bless you, of the fire station on their own time. We paid for the materials, but they provided the labor. Several years ago, we purchased a new fire engine on the east side of town, and it was too big for the substation. We knew that. We wanted to get a fire engine that would fit the needs of the community moving forward and not just be bound by the size of the garage. The firefighters literally raised the roof. They took the old roof off the existing station, they put several courses of block, they extended the walls forward, and they put a new roof on, new garage door, and for a $40,000 investment on our part for parts and materials, with many man hours, volunteers, hours from the firefighters as well as some others in our community, we got a $150,000 to $175,000 garage addition, and that will fit the needs of the community for the next 30 years. When the fire station was built, you'll see on the top of the tower there are windows that face in multiple directions. Back in World War II, this was used as a lookout point to make sure that if there were any sorties that were coming towards Holliston, we would be able to give warning to the community. I believe I heard reference earlier to the aid station that was organized by the women of the community that was on the 2nd floor. If you could get there, you could get some first aid. The station, when it was built in 1930, was not built with the needs of the fire service in the modern era being anticipated. In the mid-1990s, we received a report from an engineer explaining that the floor could no longer support the weight of the 1983 ladder truck that was parked there. The concern was that it would fall through the floor into the basement. We relocated the ladder to another substation and came to a point of decision: what are we going to do with the 1930 fire station? Are we going to keep it? Are we going to move our operations elsewhere? And the decision was made that we were going to expand the fire station. The only problem was there was a house next door and we were landlocked. We bought the property with the house on it, but instead of just tearing down the building to expand the station, we actually sold the house at auction, and it was relocated to another plot of land in the downtown area. So back in the 1990s, before it was very popular, we were already a green community because we were recycling. We're not the only organization that gives a lot of volunteer time and hours to the community. What you see here to my right, your left, which was being mentioned as you were on your way to our little plot of land here today, is the retaining wall. When I first started at the fire station, there was no access between the municipal parking lot and the Central Street businesses and the downtown area. There was a rock wall that was very ugly. There was no uniform surface. It was a bit precarious, especially when it had rained or during the winter. And so as one of the first large projects that Holliston and Bloom undertook, they came with a proposal: could they connect the municipal parking lot to Central Street? And so they came in, and with 335 volunteer hours and $18,000 worth of donated materials and supplies, what you see here is the creation. There's a retaining wall, which is very solid, looks beautiful. The DPW paved the walkway. The plantings were done by Holliston and Bloom, as well as the Downtown Marigold Project. Plantings behind me as well, all done by volunteers to maintain and to encourage the look of the flow between the municipal parking lot and the downtown business district. Then they decided they didn't want to stop with just the retaining wall. The wall directly behind me originally looked very similar to what you have here, concrete with peeling gray paint. not very appealing. So there was a Holliston High School student that, as part of a Holliston in Bloom project, came with a mural design which includes references to our 8-arch bridge. It has the state flower and the state bird, which I already heard several of you passed on that quiz, which are the Mayflower and the chickadee. It also pays tribute to a couple Holliston students who passed away in the last decade at a young age.
Our final stop was back at Goodwill Park. Mark Aronian and Stephanie Collier explained the Mission Possible project. The playground was especially designed for children to play together, regardless of any limitations.
My name is Stephanie Collier. I am the president of Mission Possible Holliston. Mission Possible Holliston is a group that was founded in 2006 as a nonprofit organization to help the town of Holliston renovate Goodwill Park Playground. Goodwill Park Playground, as you see it today, was re-renovated in 2012. After many years of grassroots fundraising at the local level and multiple grants, we landed a large matching grant through the Land and Water Conservation Fund and the town of Holliston. The primary mission for our nonprofit organization was to support individuals of all abilities here in town. The structural design of the playground takes into account many features of ADA compliance, from access to the playground, within the playground, and on each of the individual structures. The design of Goodwill Park actually evolved over several years with much input from the Board of Selectmen, the residents of Green Street, the community of Holliston, partnerships with the public school system in terms of what their curriculum are. The goal was really to create a developmentally rich play space that allowed kids of all ability to come and mature and develop at their own rate. Goodwill Park is not just a playground. It was designed as a sensory garden that offers developmentally rich, ADA compliant sensory garden items that promote play for individuals of all ability here in Holliston and surrounding town. Its unique design was implemented to not just improve the playground, but improve access for the entire community. There was integration of a traffic safety loop and parking so that the fields and adjacent play places could be better accessed by individuals visiting our town and accessing the community. Some of the fun facts specific to the design of the playground are the centrally located butterfly structure was actually themed with feedback from the Holliston Public School System, who let us know that in the early education life cycle of a butterfly is paramount to their curriculum. We actually have butterfly plants and life cycle of a butterfly educational signage to help people understand the value of that cycle. The ADA compliance pieces are a really cool fun fact. Everything from the walkway coming into the playground to the picnic tables that have spaces for wheelchairs to the surfacing. We're standing here on IPEMA certified port and press surfacing, which is seamlessly accessible by wheelchairs. Mark can let you know, so all of the sensory garden features integrate vestibular, tactile, proprioceptive features, which all happen in normally developing and individuals developing with disabilities. And the rain gardens and sensory gardens are a large feature of that.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Mark Aronian, and I'm co-chair of Holliston in Bloom, and had a part to play with the development of the park. The plantings were all designed to create a sense of peace in the picnic table area, with softening from the parking lot in a gentle way, with serviceberry and melanchier, a naturalistic plant, and it's also a bird attracting plant. And so we're trying to mirror the plantings with the playground, providing everyone in the community a place to come and relax and sit or watch their children play. So the picnic table area is really for the whole town, and it may be for people that come and that work from downtown and need a place to come have lunch or read a newspaper. And there are a lot of benches in the park that were donated by generous donors, which we can't thank enough. And that made it nice for parents to be able to sit and watch their children. And there are plants in the garden for a sense of touch, which is really helpful for children with disabilities. And also, the Mission Possible Committee came up with musical equipment here that is also very effective for children with disabilities that they can come right up to and play with. The other plantings in the rain gardens, rain gardens are a modern way of handling drainage, and there's only a 2% pitch of grade in this park, so it was an issue. And so the rain gardens are there to take the water on both ends of the park. There's one along the front and one along the back. And so that the water goes through the soil and it filters the rainwater, and then it gets down into the lower part where there are plants that like wet feet. So as you graduate up the rain garden, the plants on the top actually like it dry. And so you have a whole series of different types of plants for the senses, including plants with berries such as blueberry bushes are in the park, that like wet feet at the bottom and slowly like it dry on the top. So it's very interesting, and we understand there are a lot of people that come from other towns because this park is so very special and different that they enjoy it. So thank you all for coming. We really appreciate it.
Sharing the history, horticulture, and heart of Holliston for the America in Bloom Symposium was an exceptional honor for the entire town. We hope you enjoyed this walking tour through our great town as we celebrated our community, steeped in history, but pushing to the future.